Professor K here. And for our final topic today, we're going to learn about HTML sectioning tags. Tags that really help with layout and understanding the big groupings of content throughout HTML. So, a couple of the new tags that we learned today included list tags and image and hyperlink tags. And with list tags, we had wrapper tags like UL and OL that talked about what kinds of content we were looking at. And then tags inside list items that actually held the content. So our layout tags function a little bit like our ordered list and unordered list tags in that all they're really there for is to hold content and tell you more about what that grouping of content does in the page. But instead of defining like a list, what these tags do is define what sections of the page there are and what meaning they have. It's kind of like a global worldview, right? The really high level stuff. So we're going to learn four new HTML elements as part of that this week. We're going to learn nav for navigation. That's going to hold navigation links for the current content. Article that holds independent or redistributable content. So think of this like a newspaper article. You might have a newspaper article show up in your Apple News feed or in Google News. And that article probably lives on a website, but it can show up in Google News. It can show up in Apple News. It could show up in a newspaper. That content is independently redistributable. It doesn't change meaning because it's put in a different place. That's what the article tag is for. It's a little hard to understand. It doesn't necessarily have to include a full article. It could even be snippets of an article or previews of what an article will look like. The important part is that if you took this piece out from everything around it, it would still make sense. That's what the article tag is for. We have section. This is kind of like a generic HTML tag that just says this content, all of it is related. So you might think of a section like in our recipes example, we probably have an ingredients section and a directions section. Finally, we have a side. A side holds tangential information. So in our article, we might have an infographic that helps us understand more about the article. And if you took away that infographic, it would probably make some sense on its own, but it really needs the context of the article for you to understand the full meaning of what it means. That's when a side is the best tool to use. So instead of live coding this, I want to show you how this works in real websites because I think it helps to see it in practice. So let's break down a Boston University website and see how each of these tags are used in order to help our HTML figure out what the high level structure is and help screen readers navigate. So here I have an example of one of our articles from The Brink, which is a research publication that Boston University publishes. Now, The Brink is focused on publishing content daily. Some things you'll see here are like images, large amounts of text. There might be stuff on the inside that helps you understand more. There's a full lettering here, right? And like some images, and then some different related topics, share the story, comments, and discussion. So that's what we have to look at here. Let's take a look and inspect the element and break this page down to see how it's using different items. First of all, we have some navigation here. More publications. That helps you get to other publications. And then sections and search. Let's just do inspect element. And whenever you're inspecting element, the easiest way to see what something is doing is to right click directly on it. So you can see that this is a menu. And then nearby it, underneath publications nav title, is this nav class publications nav menu. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and then drag this over, hide this stuff for now. We don't necessarily need the CSS. We really care about the HTML, right? So anytime you're in the web inspector, one handy thing you can do to kind of get a sense of where your HTML is falling in the page is just hover over it. So when you hover over this, you can see that over here underneath the menu, watch that little black pop-up menu. That shows that this is right there in the document and it has a height of 0 and a width of 1628. If we were to go and click this button and show this, let's go right click, inspect element. Back in here, now when we hover over that nav, we can see that it's got space again. JavaScript is controlling how that shows and hides. So that's what that's doing is JavaScript using the button is doing an action to make this taller and shorter. But notice here that this uses the nav HTML tag. Why does it use the nav HTML tag? Because this HTML is here to assist you in navigating throughout all of the Boston University editorial websites, including Bostonia, View Today, and The Brick. So that's the purpose of it. That's why it's marked up that way in the navigation. You can see that underneath, you might still have an unordered list. That's because it doesn't really matter what order you visit these in, Bostonia, View Today, etc. Not particularly important. You just have them in a list. The reason why we use a list here instead of just links in the navigation is for older browsers that don't understand this element. Remember that HTML5 is still new. So in certain cases, you may need to port in fallbacks, such as this, to ensure that your step works across all browsers as expected. So that's the navigation tag. It could take the form of plenty of other things too. You can have multiple nav tags on the page. So notice that back up here, we had the publications nav, and that had the publications nav menu using the nav tag. But it's also okay to have another nav tag for the sections. So again, inspect element. Let's see where that landed. Going up the tree to see where the parent is. This is a navigation, and this is the masthead navigation, the navigation that's specific to this particular publication. So it's okay to have multiple navigations on a page. Now let's take a look at what else we have here. We kind of have a large amount of main content, and then we also have a footer down here. The footer tells us more about the site as a whole and how it contacts people. So how can you break down this main content area a little bit more so that it's easier to understand what the purpose of the content is? The first is main. Main is an HTML tag that just says this is the main content. So what's inside the main content? Everything that is related to the content that's specific to this page. So notice that the footer's not in there, the header's not in there, the navigation for the break isn't in there. This is really all about that main content and article. Inside, we have some divs that are there for styling, and then we have an article. So here, the article is going to comprise the entire article, striking out racist terminology and engineering. And let's just scroll down to see kind of where that ends. Hover over it and notice that it ends just a little bit before the authors. So next to article, we have a couple sections. An authors section that says this is by Mike Seal, a section for comments and discussion. This is all stuff that's tangentially related, right? And it comes in an ordered list, a related stories section below, and then a latest stories section. So see how each of those sections describes a different type of content that comes up on the page? That's important to know with HTML. Let's see if we can find an aside. So one thing you can do in the inspector is use this little search HTML to kind of find specific stuff. So if you wanted to know how this video tag came in here, one thing you could do is you could search the HTML and actually finds that right in here. I'm going to use this to see if this page has an example of an aside tag that I can show you. So I'm going to search for aside, and look at that, it does. So let's scroll this into view. Cool. That's a really handy way of navigating HTML using the inspector, right? So it turns out that this Reed Gomez's full letter is actually an aside. So this, when you click to expand, has a full letter. So why are we using an aside for that in the article? Well, it's related to the article. This full letter that Gomez has written to Pearson that explains why racist terminology and engineering is not good is really important to the article content. It's related, tangentially related. It's that tangential relationship, the part that says this content helps you understand the rest of the story. That part is why you would choose an aside. So that's an overview of exactly how some of these sectioning elements are used in practice. So think about the relationships between different content tags when you're choosing HTML tags. Think about whether a piece of content is independently redistributable. Could you pull it out and still have it make sense? Or is it something that really needs the context around it to be clear what it is and for the meaning to come through. So these are the kinds of things that you think about with semantic HTML. And you're not always going to get it right the first time. If you don't know the best tag to use, just go ahead and throw something down, get something styled. The benefits of the way that I'm teaching you HTML and CSS in this class is that it should be relatively easy for you to switch between these tags if you realize that one of these tags is not the right fit for the content semantically. So we're going to learn how to make it easy to switch between those content types without affecting your styles, which is great. But for now, do your best to make a good guess at what the best tag to use is. I'll see you later. That's it for new HTML elements this week.